The movie opens with two men arriving at a secret US military base amidst a harsh blizzard. Standing before a mirror, they present their ID cards for verification. A light above them flickers on, revealing an operator on the other side, holding a phone. After confirming their identities as the replacement team, the operator grants them access through a concealed door. Reaching for a safe, the operator gives each of the men one gun and 3 bullets. After signing the register, they go to a thick steel door which swings open, revealing 2 other men emerging from a room. Their shift is over, and these 2 are about to replace them for the night. These men are United States Air Force Strategic Missile Wing controllers, who are entrusted with keys required to launch a missile attack. The 2 men settle into their workstations and begin their shift. However, one of them notices that 2 red bulbs at Station 8 are still blinking, indicating a warhead alert. The senior officer, believing it to be a technical glitch, resets the warhead alarm. Live feeds of nuclear missile warheads appear on the screens in the chamber. Suddenly, an alarm blares from a speaker, and a code is transmitted to the 2 officers on duty. Following protocol, they open a restricted locker, retrieve 2 red cards containing top-secret missile launch codes, and match them with the code received over the speaker. They then enter the launch code into their computers. To their horror, the launch order is confirmed, and a 60-second countdown to missile launch commences. As per procedure, the 2 officers open the missile launcher gates and activate all 10 nuclear missiles, preparing them for launch. With the countdown reaching 40 seconds, the senior officer breaks protocol by requesting to speak with a higher authority on the phone. But his calls go unanswered. The countdown plummets to less than 10 seconds, and while the junior officer is poised to launch the missiles using his key, the senior officer is paralyzed by fear, realizing that launching the missiles could result in the deaths of at least 20 million people. Sensing his superior's hesitation, the junior officer points his revolver at him and forcefully urges him to turn his key, prepared to shoot him if he fails to comply with protocol. The officers are unaware that the event they are experiencing is a nuclear attack drill. The drill aims to assess the willingness of officers to make the agonizing decision of initiating a nuclear strike. The scene shifts, and we see a helicopter descending onto the NORAD Combat Operations Center in Cheyenne Mountain Complex, Colorado. 2 FBI agents, Lyle Watson and Arthur Cabot, disembark and are escorted into a secluded, sealed office for a meeting with Dr. John McKittrick, the head of computer operations. As McKittrick settles into a meeting with the 2 FBI agents and 2 high-ranking generals, Agent Cabot reveals that they must leave within an hour for a meeting with the President of the United States. Their purpose is to discuss the outcomes of the unannounced nuclear missile launch drill, which revealed that 22% of the officers entrusted with launching nuclear missiles were unwilling to do so. In response, General Beringer announces he will implement a stricter psychological screening program to eliminate such individuals from this exceptionally demanding responsibility. In a heated discussion, McKittrick says that human presence in the final launch decision will only cause this scenario to happen again and again. His secretary adds that the time to respond in case of a nuclear attack from Russia is not enough to consider for human conscience. Hence, McKittrick concludes that it should be left on a machine to immediately act on whatever decision is relayed from the president. Despite General Beringer's disapproval, McKittrick persuades the FBI agents to examine their War Operation Plan Response computer. This sophisticated machine learning program continuously gathers and analyzes data, then simulates war scenarios between the US and the USSR in the form of a game. Through its countless simulations, WOPR devises strategies to maintain American dominance. McKittrick convinces the agents to implement his plan of replacing the wing control officers with an electronic relay system, effectively removing human involvement from the final launch decision and entrusting it to WOPR. Far from the NORAD base, in Seattle, we find a young David Lightman running late for his biology class. When he reaches his class, he sits behind his friend Jennifer Mack, who is equally unmotivated and struggling with biology. Their teacher bluntly informs David that he has got an F in his exams. David's snarky remark towards his teacher lands him in the principal's office, a familiar destination for him. However, as he nears the principal's door, he discovers the password to the school's district computer system hidden underneath a desk. Later that afternoon, he invites Jennifer to his room where he hacks into the school's computer system using the password he found earlier. He proceeds to change his biology grade from a F to a C, and does the same with Jennifer's grades. When she protests, he first changes her grade back to a F, but later changes it to an A without her knowledge. During dinner that night, David sees an advertisement of a new game from a computer game company based in Sunnyvale, California. Intending to see the program behind their game, he programs his computer to scan a list of telephone numbers in Sunnyvale. and dial every number in search for the computer game company. The next day, Jennifer apologizes to David and asks him to change her biology grades. They head to his room, where David reveals he has already changed her grade to an A. Meanwhile, his computer is still dialing numbers to find the game company when he accidentally connects to an unidentified system. David asks the system to list games in hopes of finding those from the company. The system responds with a list including Falcon's Maze, Bridge, Checkers, Backgammon, Poker, and Global Thermonuclear War. He then prints the list and takes it to two of his hacker friends, Malvin and Jim. On David's provocation, Jim tells him about the backdoor method where the designer of the system keeps one password to bypass any security measures that may be added later. Unsure of the password, Malvin suggests looking for clues in the first game, Falcon's Maze. David then heads to the library to search for information on the creator of the game Falcon's Maze, where he learns that the game was created by Dr. Stephen Falcon. Disappointed, David discovers that his computer program blocks any information related to the name Falcon. Undeterred, he continues his search at the library. After a week of research, he finds that Dr. Falcon developed a machine learning program that allowed a computer to play games like chess and poker, learning from its mistakes and improving its skills with each game. Sadly, according to a newspaper article, Dr. Falcon died young at 41 after his son Joshua and wife passed away in a car accident. Suddenly, David connects the dots and guesses that the password might be Joshua after Falcon's son. His hunch is correct. David enters the password, and the system grants him access. However, he is unaware that he has connected to WAPRO at the NORAD Combat Operations Center, not a gaming computer system in Sunnyvale. Joshua is the backdoor password into WAPRO, allowing the user to bypass all other security systems and enter the mainframe. WAPRO recognizes him as Dr. Falcon and invites him to play chess. Mistaking it for a game, David orders it to play Global Thermonuclear War instead. He chooses to play as the Soviet Union and commands the launch of nuclear missiles at Las Vegas and Seattle. Over at Colorado, David's action triggers alarm bells at NORAD, warning of at least 28 missiles from the Soviet Union headed towards the western U.S. General Beringer orders DEFCON levels to be pushed to 3, bomber airplanes to start patrolling, and the president to be notified of the situation. Before he can proceed further, David's mother calls him downstairs to take out the trash, forcing him to shut down his computer. As a result of this, WAPRO turns off its missile alert, and the situation returns to normal for the time being. Soon enough, NORAD officials discover that someone from outside triggered the nuclear missile attack simulations in WAPRO and trace it back to Seattle. Meanwhile, David learns from the news that he has triggered a full-scale nuclear alert at NORAD. Panicking at the prospect of being arrested, he calls Jennifer, who advises him to simply stop calling the number. However, while cleaning his room, he receives a call from WAPRO informing him about the progress of his game. By that time, the game has been running for 31 hours, 12 minutes, and 49 seconds, with an estimated remaining time of 52 hours and 17 minutes. When asked about the game's purpose, WAPRO simply states that the only goal is to win. Suddenly, David's phone rings, and startled, he immediately pulls the wire out. What David doesn't know is that his actions haven't gone unnoticed. Later that afternoon, while he is coming out of a local shop, FBI agents surround him, search him, and sternly escort him into a car. They are taking him to Colorado for questioning. Meanwhile, at NORAD, the situation has become tense once more. The WAPRO system continues to simulate a nuclear war, generating countermoves for both the US and the Soviet Union. This escalating simulation has real-world consequences. In response to the perceived threat of US bombers that General Beringer ordered earlier, the Soviets have also raised their alert level, pushing DEFCON 4. Meanwhile, David arrives at the NORAD facility, and everyone is informed of his actions. Dr. McKittrick requests a private conversation with David and takes him to his office. He accuses David of tampering with the computer system, resulting in the escalation of DEFCON levels from 5 to potentially 1. David admits to initially breaching the system to play a video game, but denies any further contact. Instead, he claims that Joshua, the computer system at NORAD, was the one who contacted him. However, McKittrick suspects that David is collaborating with someone outside the US and relaying sensitive information. Tempers flare, and McKittrick receives a phone call, prompting him to rush outside. He is informed that WAPRO has been compromised again, and the missile launch codes are at risk. Despite McKittrick's recommendation to remain calm, General Beringer raises DEFCON levels to 3 and orders US bombers to keep patrolling the skies, monitoring Soviet movements. Tensions are mounting rapidly both on US and USSR sides. Meanwhile, inside the office, McKittrick's secretary observes David interacting with the computer and quickly informs the others. Inside the office, David communicates with WAPRO, who informs him that its final plan is to elevate DEFCON levels to 1 and launch the US missiles towards the USSR in 28 hours. WAPRO is unable to differentiate between a game and reality, and continues to simulate the initial scenario of Soviet nuclear missiles attacking the US. The system then reveals weird information. It says that Dr. Falcon is difficult to reach, both at his Seattle terminal and at a classified location. Intrigued, David asks about the classified address, to which the system responds, Dr. Richard Hume, ACA, Stephen Falcon, Tall Cedar Road, Colorado. Before David can utter another word, he is apprehended by FBI agents and informed that he will face espionage charges. As he is being dragged away, he shouts to McKittrick that Joshua is the one instigating this game and will initiate World War III if not stopped. Call Falcon, please call Falcon, he cries out before being locked behind a secure door. Using an ingenious plan and a tape recorder, David successfully unlocks the door and escapes the NORAD facility amidst a group of tourists on tour. After hitchhiking on a lumber truck, he uses a payphone to contact Jennifer and requests her to book a flight to Oregon. However, Jennifer surprises him by arriving in person. David reveals to Jennifer that he believes Dr. Stephen Falcon is still alive, and they embark on a journey to Oregon together. In a lakeside cottage in Oregon, the two youngsters find Dr. Stephen Falcon, who has been living under the alias Dr. Richard Hume. Meanwhile, back at NORAD, General Beringer receives an alert about 2 missiles approaching Alaska, accompanied by 2 Russian fighter jets. Taking charge and monitoring the live feed on his screen, the general orders 2 F-16 jets to intercept the missiles in Alaska and report back with visual confirmation. Contrary to the live feed, the pilots report that no missiles or Russian jets have been detected by their radars in Alaska. As if mocking the general, the missile tracks on his screen simply disappear, indicating no Russian attack. On the WAPRO clock, we see the timer ticks down, indicating that only 14 hours remain until it starts launching the missiles without anyone's knowledge. The scene shifts to Dr. Falcon, who is sitting with the kids and discussing his philosophy towards life. It's evident from the conversation that he has developed a very pessimistic worldview following the death of his son. He explains that the primary purpose of creating WAPRO was to simulate nuclear war without actually engaging in one, demonstrating that there are no winners in a nuclear conflict. However, the individuals in the war room at NORAD stubbornly maintained their belief in their ability to win a nuclear war, and that there could be acceptable levels of human casualties. As a result, he simply resigned, and they staged a fake death for him. The kids try to reason with Dr. Falcon, reminding him that his outlook would be less bleak if his son, Joshua, were still alive. They urge him to make at least a phone call to NORAD officials to clarify the situation. In response, he welcomes them to stay the night in his cabin, and then retires to his bedroom. Frustrated, the kids leave the cabin in search of a boat to depart. Outside, they find no boat, and are unable to leave the island since David cannot swim. He has a breakdown, regretting his procrastination in learning how to swim, because he always assumed he would have enough time. The young boy wishes he had never learned about any of this, and that the world could return to normal. Suddenly, Dr. Falcon appears in a helicopter, and urges the kids to join him as they are running late to save the day. The scene shifts to the NORAD where General Beringer is alerted about 300 Soviet intercontinental ballistic missiles heading towards the US. When the general asks Dr. McKittrick if this is once again just a simulation, he replies that the WAPRO is functioning perfectly, hence this cannot be a simulation. In response, the general orders DEFCON-1 and orders the US bombers and submarines to get ready to retaliate to the attack. When they read the initial report from WAPRO, they see that the first strike from the Soviet Union is a full-scale attack on the US, and hence their retaliation should also be all out. Meanwhile, the Soviets are still denying initiating any attack, but WAPRO warns of a Soviet submarine being detected. The general orders to lock down the entire Cheyenne Mountain complex and initiate launch mode. Fortunately, David, Jennifer, and Dr. Falcon crash into the NORAD facility and burst into the war room just in time. Dr. Falcon frantically informs General Beringer that the nuclear attack they are witnessing is merely a simulation, not reality. However, the general remains unconvinced. Dr. McKittrick asserts that the system is functioning flawlessly, and there is no indication of a simulation. General Beringer is compelled to believe this, as the consequences of questioning the system's accuracy could be disastrous. Dr. Falcon attempts to reason with the general, questioning why the enemy would risk a full-scale attack when they are well aware that it would result in their own annihilation. He emphasizes that there would be no victors in such a scenario, making it utterly illogical. Finally, he persuades the general to delay the US retaliation until the Soviet missiles reach their targets. The countdown reaches its end, and the impact time arrives. However, no missiles strike the US, and targeted US bases report no damage. The tension dissipates, and everyone breathes a collective sigh of relief. However, Dr. Falcon observes that WAPRO continues to proceed with the simulated Soviet nuclear attack, ignoring Dr. McKittrick's attempts to regain control and stand down the missiles. WAPRO relentlessly generates numerous passwords to crack the 10-character launch codes for the US nuclear missiles. Upon success, it will initiate the launch of thousands of missiles towards the Soviet Union. Disconnecting WAPRO would trigger an immediate missile launch, as the system would interpret it as NORAD's destruction. Disarming the missiles is not an option, as they only have approximately 5.3 minutes remaining. Seeing every option fail, Dr. Falcon and David infiltrate the WAPRO system and challenge it to a game of tic-tac-toe against itself. The system repeatedly draws the game, and as a machine learning program, it learns the concept of a draw. Meanwhile, WAPRO also acquires the 10-character nuclear launch code and initiates the launch sequence. However, before fully launching all missiles, it simulates various nuclear war scenarios and concludes that there is no winner in any scenario. The machine realizes that a nuclear strike by one power against another inevitably leads to the complete annihilation of both nations. As a result, it relinquishes control of the system and invites Dr. Falcon to play a game of chess instead. As the final credits roll in, everyone is celebrating and we see the message: the only winning move is to not play on the screen.